Discussing films.
Subscribe.
Hello and welcome to the Retrospective Review Halloween special. My god, is that exciting. I love Halloween. I love the Halloween movies, the franchise, which I'm obviously talking about today, and my camera's off. Hang on. I'm way too centered. Let me just fix that. I love the Halloween franchise, which had way too many installments after 1979. Then in 2018, John Carpenter revamped the entire franchise, saying, no, everything that happened after 1978 did not happen. Just this movie and 2018, that's all that counts. Halloween Kills is coming out in a few days, but by the time you're seeing this, it will have already come out, and in all honesty, I will probably have already had a review of it on the channel by the time you're seeing this video, but for me it hasn't come out yet. For me it's coming out in about 5 days. So without further ado, this is John Carpenter's Halloween. Firstly, I love the setting of this film. It's just an ordinary neighborhood in an ordinary town in the middle of Illinois, which really to me shows that this could happen anywhere, and that's what they're trying to do. It is taking place in Haddonfield, Illinois, but it could be any town, it could be any state, and that's really something that I love about this film. Now, the first act of this film is really some of the best horror I have ever seen. So firstly, the opening scene is absolutely brilliant. Not only is it technically impressive, because to pull off a single POV shot lasting that long is technically impossible, and really impressive with all the coordination and setup that it took to make that scene work. But also from a filmmaking perspective, it is really incredible. It's creepy and eerie, and every second of it you're just terrified about what is about to happen and about what could potentially happen. And of course, all of it builds up to the reveal that Michael Myers is a 10-year-old boy who just stabbed his sister to death. And it's really just an incredible scene to follow up the iconic opening credits of this film. I love that the first act is nothing but a slow and intense build-up, constantly rising in tension, as we never get to see Michael and we never get to see him killing. We just get the aftermath, we just get the tension and the build-up of every single second, constantly putting you on edge throughout the entire movie. After all, nothing is really creepier than the idea of someone stalking you, someone constantly watching you every single place you go and every single move you make, just standing there in silence. Half the time you don't even see Michael at all, just the knowledge that he is there, or the knowledge that he might be there, makes it so much creepier. It gives off that feeling that you're being watched, even though there's nobody around you. Now, the second act is admittedly a bit boring. It's really just a bunch of teenagers, and I say that because most of them look like they're in their 20s, just kind of running around, having sex and drinking alcohol. Michael walks around a bit, and some of the shots that they show of Michael staring at them is very creepy and putting me on edge a bit, but it just doesn't have the same stalker feeling as the first act, and honestly it gets kind of slow in the middle. Though it does create a lot of empathy for Laurie Strode, as it shows that she really cares about the kids that she's babysitting, and she really cares about her friends, where her friends don't really seem to care about much of anything outside of immediate pleasures and getting off. Now, the third act is absolutely incredible. Starting off with really intense cultish imagery when Laurie first finds all of her friends dead after Michael had killed every single one of them. And it's really intense to watch him chase after her, getting just inches away every single time. Like when she's trying to get back inside the house, she's banging on the door, screaming for help, as Michael walks closer and closer to the front steps, actually getting onto the front porch before she's finally able to open the door and get inside. He was literally one step away from killing her right there. That said, it can get a bit annoying as Michael constantly misses every single stab, and Laurie constantly drops her only weapon every time she thinks she's killed him. Even after stabbing him through the eye and seeing him get back up, she still doesn't think to just keep holding on to the knife and not turning her back to him like that. Now, all of that said, the final moments of this film are literally some of the best horror I have ever seen in my entire life. Watching a helpless Laurie cowering in the corner of the closet as Michael stabs and punches his way through the door, ready to stab and kill her as she plunges the coat hanger into his eye and throws him out. It's a lot like the famous axe scene in The Shining. Just generally speaking, that helpless character hiding from the giant hulking monster is some of the most classic and iconic writing ever. It's also really, really intense when the doctor finally shows up and saves her from Michael. Michael had just wrestled her to the floor, and we see his face for the first time as he puts his mask back on and is ready to stab her once again. Just in the last moment, the doctor pulls out his gun and shoots him 6 times in a row, throwing him out a second-story window as he falls presumably to his death. Then, after giving one of the coolest and most iconic lines in horror history,
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
the doctor looks over the ledge and sees that Michael is gone. Laurie starts crying more and more as we get to see some of the iconic places and sets in the film shown with some really beautiful creative imagery that honestly resembles a painting, all while we hear the main theme come back and Michael breathing over it. The visual style of this film is really, really great. Firstly, I love the look of film. It gives a much more organic and natural human feeling in cinema that you just can't get with digital cinema. And the shot choice and cinematography, especially in the first and second acts, are really great at increasing the tension, and it creates a lot more of a creepy feeling than it could. It gives the entire film a much deeper sense of tension and horror. Seeing over Laurie's shoulder as she stands in front of a pitch black room with nothing but Michael's white mask sticking out of it, or seeing Michael and Laurie struggle from a very low angle that not only exaggerates the height difference between the two, but also creates a helpless feeling in the audience that we can't do anything just as Laurie can't do anything. And I especially love how much Michael is covered in darkness. Obviously his mask is a very important part of his visual style, but that black jumpsuit is just as important, as it pretty much makes everything but his face impossible to see, especially at night. And when he's always hiding in the shadows, always lurking behind you, it really does make this film so much better for it. Though the lighting can look really weird in some of the outdoor scenes, as lighting any nighttime scene is hard enough as it is, lighting a nighttime scene back in the 70s was a lot harder and a lot more difficult to accomplish, so the lighting looks a bit awkward in some of those shots, like when Laurie is first looking around the house. It can almost look like there's a literal spotlight on her. However, the nighttime scenes indoors, like the fight in the living room or at the very end of the film, look and are shot really, really well in such a way that exaggerates the scene and makes it look a lot more intense and creates a lot more tension throughout the entire moment. I also absolutely love the car drive scene. Like, when I saw that again while watching this movie, I was absolutely blown away by how that scene looks. The sunlight coming in through the front windshield, glowing on each of the characters, is just beautiful cinematography and beautiful lighting. It makes the scene so strangely deep, while it's really not being about anything important at all. And of course, I absolutely love the incredible and iconic opening credits of this film. Firstly, the very design of that shot of a pitch black room with nothing but a single glowing jack-o'-lantern in it makes it one of the creepier and best opening credit sequences I've ever seen. A lot of horror movies tend to have just really obnoxious, over-the-top credits that kind of just are in your face and are trying way too hard. This film has something so very simple and purely terrifying about it. It's honestly just incredible. It also seems to have inspired a lot of other films, like the opening shot of The Nightmare Before Christmas. I also love the way that the text looks. Firstly, that font is so sharp and rigid. It's become one of the most iconic horror and Halloween fonts ever. But also the way that the text is glowing orange, just like the pumpkin, and the way that it fades in red and then becomes orange. It just makes the whole thing feel a lot more organic and a lot more human, and honestly, a lot scarier. It helps give the film a lot of that charm that makes it so great. And of course, the iconic opening theme that plays over it is incredible. Now, obviously, the music in this film is incredible. I obviously don't need to remind you how beautiful and iconic the main theme of this film is, but beyond that, the rest of the soundtrack is just as incredible. Michael's main theme, which is the second track in the soundtrack of this film, is really sharp. It's intense. The first note of it is shocking and honestly kind of repulsive in such a way that makes it absolutely terrifying to hear. It's almost like a jump scare of audio. And of course, there are other themes throughout this film that help give it the absolute tension and terror that it has. They're bone-chilling, they're sharp, and some of them honestly feel like they're making my heart race. Those songs help you feel as though you're actually the one being chased, and not just watching someone else be chased. Laurie Strode is a really great protagonist. Firstly, you can see how much she cares about the kids and about her friends by every single move that she makes. Unlike some of her friends, she always comes across as a very genuine and good person. Even though she doesn't always do the right thing, she always wants to. I really couldn't imagine her being nearly as good of a protagonist in this film if she was just like the rest of her friends, blowing off her responsibilities, ignoring the kids she's babysitting, and just trying to go drink and have sex all the time. Dr. Loomis has clearly been broken down throughout the years and years of trying to treat Michael. He knows Michael more than any other person in the world ever could. And the way he talks about Michael with such incredibly poetic dialogue, as if he's this demon born purely out of evil in the depths of hell, it makes you truly terrified of Michael and truly terrified of what Michael will do now that he's escaped. And like I said, Dr. Loomis talks with some really incredible poetic dialogue, and this entire film is filled with really incredible poetic dialogue. It makes the film feel a lot grander, and all of it is just incredibly well written.
I watched him for 15 years, sitting in a room, staring at a wall, not seeing the wall, looking past the wall, looking at this night, inhumanly patient, waiting for some secret, silent alarm to trigger him off. Death has come to your little town, Sheriff. You can either ignore it, or you can help me to stop it.
More fancy talk.
And it also avoids unnecessary dialogue and cliches that people say way too much in horror films.
What the hell is going on?
Jason fucking Voorhees, that's what's going on!
Michael Myers is by far the most iconic and I would say the best horror villain ever. Firstly, I love that he's always built up so slowly throughout the film up until the very final act. Up until that point, we never get to see him kill. We never really get to see his full potential until then. This idea of an anonymous villain who never talks and never shows his face was really new at the time, and John Carpenter really took that idea and made something incredible from it. He made a character that never talks and never shows any emotion and never even shows his own face. Somehow a very deep character that's acted so brilliantly. And obviously Michael has become such an iconic character that other people have tried to mimic him or have been inspired by him to create some of the other most iconic characters in horror, like Jason Voorhees or Ghostface. Now, the design of Michael is absolutely key to this. Obviously, his pale, expressionless mask going over his face, which helps symbolize the utter state of emotionlessness and complete lack of humanity that he truly has. That mask is a better representation of his soul and his emotional state than his actual face ever really could be. And it's really important to note that you cannot see any eyes. All you see is black holes. All you see is black, endless abyss through those eyes, which helps symbolize the soullessness of this character, which is something that a lot of the sequels failed to do and clearly suffered from it. It's absolutely terrifying to see nothing but that giant hulking figure with this pale white mask staring down at Laurie in complete darkness. John Carpenter's Halloween is undoubtedly one of the most iconic, famous, and best horror films ever made. It shows a physical depiction of pure evil, in a sense Satan himself, a villain with absolutely no motivation, no backstory, and no humanity. In a way, it reminds us of human nature itself, that people are, in a sense, by nature, evil, and that sometimes people will do horrible, depraved, evil things without any sense of reason or motivation behind them whatsoever. This film reminds us to believe in monsters, to believe in evil, because evil essentially lives among us every single day. Evil is not a thing that is created, it's not something that someone becomes, it is something that everybody to a certain extent is. It is something that lives inside of every single one of our souls and inside the very fabric of the universe itself. All in all, this film reminds us that sometimes you need to be scared of the boogeyman. Thank you all for watching this installment of the Retrospective review. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment, maybe even subscribe. Only a small percentage of you are. Just saying, it's a very small percent. The percent of people that are subscribed, it's low. Make it higher. But thank you all again for watching, and have a happy Halloween.